Was it on COL? I don't think so, right?
It looks like Marcos. The TV show is about Pablo Escobar. So there's a few scenes that are in Miami. So there's like a huge connection, obviously, with Miami, but kind of looks like how it was then. Well, it has to be that it was big. No, it was big now. It was about 80. The coloring, is so.
Another minute or two, we'll start. Okay, can we start?
I don't know, Rabbi Shapiro, I don't know if it's just me, but I don't hear you.
You don't hear me?
The mic is on, but I don't. Maybe the other people hear, maybe just me.
I hear you. I hear him.
Everyone hears me?
Yes, he listen hears you.
Yeah, I hear you.
I believe you.
We
hear you.
Microphone. Shmuley,
Okay, so I guess there's something with my computer, it's fine.
no,
Okay, so we're good.
Everyone else could hear me. Everybody could hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, everyone could hear, so.
I don't see your face.
Oh, now you don't see
No, we
it.
don't see you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you hear? Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Now you can see and hear. Okay, so we're learning Zeis HaBrocha from Chelik Yudalid, the second sicha. So it talks about the Parsha Zeis HaBrocha. It also talks about Simchas Torah. This is a few days before Simchas Torah. So the Rebbe says like this: Kimeduber Kama Pomim. He said, I spoke many times. Mizeh, concerning the senior. Shekosev Rambam, that the Rambam writes. Al derech zeh b'Gemara. It's also in Gemara. Concerning why do we read the Parsha V'zeis HaBrocha B'Simchas Torah? So the Rambam and the Gemara's Lashon is like this. First, the Gemara, the Rambam says that we usually read a Parsha which has to do, he says, the Parsha of the week, and then we read certain things that have to do with the time of the year. So he says like this, finally explains what we read on Shmini Atzeres. And then he says, and the next day, which is Simchas Torah, we read Zeis HaBrocha. He writes it as a hemshech and a continuation and an end of which things we read in the Torah on Yom Tov. It starts off like this. See, after he talks about the Seder HaParshiyos that you read every Shabbos, he says that Moshe Rabbeinu said that on Yom Tov you should read in the Torah, in Parsha of the Torah, which is the Inyan of the Yom Tov. And since the hemshech to that, it says that the Zeis HaBrocha we read on Simchas Torah is mashmeh, the Zeis HaBrocha, the Yom Tov, that the connection from Zeis HaBrocha to the last day of Sukkot, which is Simchas Torah, is later aklifishi seif kol hamedes. See, there are other reasons given why we read the Zeis HaBrocha on Simchas Torah. So here we see that it's not only for those reasons. One reason is the reason that the Rebbe just brought here from the Ran in Megillah, because it's the end all the Yomim Tovim, so we read the end of the Chumash. Another reason, we want to read in the Torah that we're finishing at the same time that we have the simcha of the Yom Tov of Sukkot. So the simcha of finishing the Torah should go together with the simcha of the Yom Tov. And this is something written in the Machzavitri. We know that on Shmini Atzeres, that's when we have Simchas Torah, that's when Shlomo HaMelech gave the Birchas HaMelech. When there was the Chanukas HaBeis HaMikdash, so it lasted for 14 days, and the last day was Shmini Atzeres. That's when Vayivorech HaMelech, the Melech, Shlomo HaMelech, blessed all the Yidden. So we want to read on the same day that Shlomo HaMelech blessed the Yidden, we read Zeis HaBrocha, which is the brocha that Moshe blessed. But all that, if we give any of these reasons, has nothing to do with the time of the year. It has to do with Zayte Gezach. It's not because of what the Yom Tov represents. It's because it's the end of the Yom Tovim, but it's not for the Yom Tov. So, but the way that Rambam puts it and the way the Gemara says is mashmeh, that it's not only for those reasons. The Parsha Zeis HaBrocha has to do with the time of the year, the date, the Yom Tov that we read it in. In other words, it has to do with Shmini Atzeres. Since it's connected to Shmini Atzeres, Parshas Brocha has to do with what Shmini Atzeres stands for. What is it? The Rebbe says, I could have explained, Al Pi HaYidua, based on what is known, Shemini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, which is that's when we do Simchas Torah, Hi Aklita. That's when we, Chassidus calls it Klita, we absorb, we internalize. That means that then we absorb, we internalize all the hamshachas that happen at Rosh and Chedesh B'chlal, basically the whole month of Tishrei. So comes to Shmini Atzeres, that's the time when we absorb it. Then till then we have so many other hamshachas, and here we internalize it. And since the main thing of Rosh Hashanah is the fact that we crown Hashem as king, like the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, Imru lefone Malchias, Eibusher asks us, please say for me, in front of me, the psukim of Malchias, Kedei shetamlichuni aleichem, in order for me to be melech on you. So since the Iker of Rosh Hashanah is that in the Kabul Eibusher is melech, actually in the Ha'ara 10, the Rebbe writes that we know that the Reb Sadia Gaon, when he gives the 10 reasons for Shofar, so the first reason he gives, V'loshen Reb Sadia Gaon, Ha'inyan ha'rishim b'tkiyah Shofar the Rosh Hashanah, Onu mamlichim aleinu sabeir b'yim zeh, that we make the Eibusher as king. So since that's the Iker of Rosh Hashanah, Harei Muvim Shemi Ikrei Ha'inyan and Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah Higlitas Hamshochazu Datem Lechuni Aleich. Since Shmini Atzeres is basically taking what we had before and internalizing, and mainly from Rosh Hashanah. So since Rosh Hashanah is in of Kabbalas Malchus, making the Eibusher Melech, so on Simchas Torah Shmini Atzeres, we internalize that inyan. Shanim Sheches the Gilui B'Pnimi is the Shmini Atzeres. This inyan of Kabbalah the Eibusher as a Melech, making him as a Melech, is nimshech begilui, and we take it into a pnimius on Shmini Atzeres. So if that's the pshat of Shmini Atzeres, if Shmini Atzeres inyan is Kabbalas Malchus of the Eibusher, we see a connection between Shmini Atzeres and Parshas Brocha. Mashikosa and Pasha Brocha, it says, Vahi Bishur Melech, Bisasav Rashom, Yachaship Yisrael. Pasha Ptaich is that the Eibishter, the Melech was on the Eibishter. The Eibishter was a Melech, the Yeshurun. There are all kinds of pshatim, but I'm going to say it very simple. Yeshurun goes on Yidden. The Eibishter is a Melech amongst Yidden. Bisasav Rashom, Yachaship Yisrael, when the heads of the nation get together and their Yidden are all together, that's when the Eibishter is the Melech amongst Yidden. So Shabazeh based in Yonim. So in this posik, there are two things. The beginning of the posik, Vahi Bishur Melech means Hu B'chinas Tamlichuni Aleichem. The Eibishter is the Melech. That fits to what we have at Rosh Hashanah, that we make the Eibishter as a Melech. Hamshoch as B'chinas Malchus is Baruch, we make the Malchus of the Eibishter. And Bisasef Rosh Hashanah Yachaship Yisrael in the second half of the posik, where it says, when does this happen? When we gather all the people together, who that is also connected. That means that all the Yidden are together, we gather together, and they're all one. And if they're one, there's no difference of Reish V'Regel. So we have two things here: the union of Kabbalah's Malchus and the Achdus of all the Yidden. And the Rebbe says these two things go together. The union of Achdus and Malchus are one thing really. Because when we come to accept David as Malchus, as a Melech, all the Yidden are equal. How do you make a person a Melech king? You give yourself over to him. So Rosh Hashanah, when we're Makabel Eibishter as Melech, means we accept, we give ourselves over to the Eibishter. That's the union of Bittul and Kabbalah Seil. And if you have Bittul and Kabbalah Seil, everyone is equal. If there are differences between the different kinds of the Sheikhem, the heads, and Sheikh and Mecha, the lower people, Ein Ze Bittul Gomur, the Kabbalah Seil Machal Shemaim Shlema. It's not the real bittul. If you're one is different than the other, that means that you still have a Metzias. When is the Shaykh is that different one than the other? When your Metzias counts. So my Metzias is different than your Metzias. But if there's no Metzias, they're all the same. So when it says the Pasuk of Hibishur Mel B'Sasa Rashom, the Nekuda is Kabbalah's Malchus, and the Pasuk says when do we see or how does Kabbalah's Malchus happen? Because all Yidden are B'Achdus. So that's the pshat of the Pasuk. Just like when we crown a physical king. The people have to be mevatel themselves. When you crown the king, when you coronate the king, you have to have shleimus habitul. And when the shleimus habitul, shove bebitul zeh sar godel ish pashup. The biggest officer and the simple person are equal. If the sar, the officer feels, oh, people are mitzias, it'll be missing in the bitul after the king. V'havdola beisar the ish pashup. This that there is a difference. We know there is a difference between an officer in the government and a simple person. But that is only after he becomes a king. The Geis Exeris, and he makes rules. Then there are different how you keep the rules. But not about Shal Dachtore. So when the Pasuk says the Hibishur Melech, which represents these two inyonim, the union of Kabbalah's Malchus and the Achdus, they really go together because the Kabbalah's Malchus fits with Achdus. Now that's what the Pasuk says in Parsha Brocha. Since Shmini Atzeres is connected to Malchus, so it fits to Shmini Atzeres. But not only that, it even fits in the name of Shmini Atzeres. What's the Pshat Atzeres? There are few Pirushim. The simple Pshat of Atzeres means to hold yourself back. Hold yourself back from what? Other Yom Tovim have a special mitzvah. Pesach has mitzvah of matzah, not even chometz. Sukkot has a mitzvah of Sukkot and Dalet Minim. Comes to Shmini Atzeres, there's no special mitzvah. Which is, by the way, why in Gemara, Shavuos is called Atzeres, because there's no special mitzvah in Shavuos. It's only not doing melach. So that's a simple pshat in Atzeres Tilachem. But there are other Pirushim, two more Pirushim in the Taich Atzeres. Number one, Atzeres Tilachem means Loshem Malchus and Amshala. The word Atzeres comes to the word Malchus. There's a Loshem of Aposik that shows that the word Atzeres means kingship. Actually, in Yiddish Afila, when we say there's an heir to the throne, we say as a Yerush Etzer. Comes from this word. So Atzeres means Malchus. Atzeres also, in the second shot, is Knishin Telechen Kepirish Atargim. The Targum says it means you will gather. Hainu is Asfus, the Iskapsus, the gathering, Shekol B'nei Yisrael, Yiskapsu Kulom, Lehikolo, B'mokim Echad, B'kedev B'sheshan. That all the Yidden get together and we connect ourselves to our Shedid, but all as one. Shehein, these two pshatim in the word Atzeres fit to the base Nekudas by Yibishur Melech. With what we said before in the Pasuk of Yibishur Melech, which is a Pasuk in Parsha Brocha, which is Pchinas Malucha, as he said, Yibishur Melech, And Beisasek Rosh Hashanah Yachad Shifta Yisrael means kibbutz v'yiskal kulam yachad. They all gather together. And it's one thing with Yashahot Ba'atali Canal, they all goes together. So the Chura Bepashta is when we said that Smashman from the Gemara and the Rambam, that he reads Parsha Brocha Shmini Atzeres, which by us it's the second day of Shmini Atzeres, but it's connected to Shmini Atzeres, is connected to the Teichon of the day, not only because of side reasons. Chura, we have a good connection. It's connected to one of the psukim. Is the Inyan of Shmini Atzeres, which is the klite of what took place on Rosh Hashanah. We still have to understand. Because Shmini Atzeres is aklite the Chol Yonit Tishrei. Taketru. Shmini Atzeres is when we absorb, we internalize all the Yonim of Tishrei. The Ikin and Yonim of Shmini Atzeres, Simcha. But we should know the main thing of Shmini Atzeres is Simcha. So we connected before the Inyan of the Parsha with one prat in Shmini Atzeres, that this is the klite of Kabbalas Malchus. But if you ask somebody, Bepel Mamish, what's the Iker of Shmini Atzeres? The Iker of Shmini Atzeres is the mitzvah of Simcha. Ubemamish bate b'hasimcha the Shmini Atzeres Simcha Steir in Yonah Shel Rosh Hashanah Davke Yisem Mishar Yom Chidish Zeh. So how does this union of Rosh Hashanah, which we said is the Nekud of Malchus, how does it connect to the union of Simcha? And we say something special in Shmini Atzeres. L'chura, Simcha is Sukkot also is Simcha. So a person, people are happy when they make a king, but then it has nothing to do specifically with Shmini Atzeres. We have to find a connection between this union of Kabbalas Malchus of Rosh Hashanah, also not only to the general union of what happens Shmini Atzeres, but to the Simcha of Shmini Atzeres. The fact of the Simcha represents the same union as the Kabbalas Malchus. What is, and something specifically Shmini Atzeres, not in the other days of Sukkot. Babir Bezes or the Pshat is. We said before that when does it come? How does it express itself? When all the Yidden are equal. So, like it says in Rosh Hashanah, which is the day of Kabbalas Malchus, what does the pasuk say in connection to Rosh Hashanah? That you're all standing in front of me, the Sheichem Shepteichem, all the Yidden. They're all mamish like one. And we read Nitzavim right before Rosh Hashanah, and Chassidus says, Atem Nitzavim Hayem, Dod Dayem, the Din Rabba goes at Rosh Hashanah. And it all fits. It fits because Rosh Hashanah is Kabbalas Malchus. In order to have Kabbalas Malchus, you have to have Achdus, and that's Atem Nitzavim Kulchem, all equal. The Gilui B'china Zu, Dafke B'Shmini Atzeres, but the Gilui of this union of the Achdus is Dafke Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Teire, Shen Yonehu Klita B'Gilui. Wow, what's Shmini Atzeres? The absorbing. The internalizing, which means bringing what was there before into more gilui. Rosh Hashanah, when we say that we have the Kabbalas Malchus, what's felt? Kabbalas Seil, the bittul. Shmini Atzeres, v'simchas teirem, is galuhu ba'yichud v'iskalus the Chol Yisrael, itnu the simcha. Shenyon the gilui. Shmini Atzeres are the same thing. We have the union of Achdus and the union of Iskalus, all the union together. But in which union is it felt? In the Simcha of Shmini Atzeres. So it's like Rosh Hashanah, and it's the Gilui, but this, it has to do with the Simcha of Shmini Atzeres. That's what the Kasha we ask. What's got to do with the Simcha? Ki dafke b'Shmini Atzeres Simcha Steire, meaning Yisraelu, the Kol Yisrael Smeichim b'Zeh b'Shavui b'Li Chiluk. It's only Shmini Atzeres, Steire, that the Simcha is equal by all Yidden. So the Nekuda of equality, which is there in Rosh Hashanah, in the form of Bittul, that Hetzach and Bittul, and this brings the Kabbalas Malchus, this is connected to the Simcha Dafke of Shmini Atzeres. Because Shmini Atzeres, the Simcha is that all the Yidden, Simcha Steir, all the Yidden are equal. And that's the Gilui of Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe says that in Yonah Gilui, Simcha is more Gilui than Bittul. That's Mavish, your show, it's a Gilui. So the real Gilui of the Bittul is through the Simcha that we're all equal. Mashenka and Yonah Shem Kippur is only from Rosh Hashanah. It's not connected to Yom Kippur. Even though the fact that we get forgiven for our Averis and Yom Kippur comes because of Atzmus, which is higher than the Chalkas, and maybe David could forgive us. And al derech zeh b'nefesh yivom tzad etzem haneshama. And for the person, how do you reach that madrege of get forgiven from the Eibishter, from the etzem of the Eibishter, if we serve the Eibishter with our etzem haneshama? So l'chura, even Yom Kippur, we also have the achdus of all the Yidden. Because when we're talking about the etzem haneshama, we all have the etzem haneshama, we're all equal. So the Rebbe says it's not. Mikol mekim hakapora atzmo. The pale there's what's the gilui of the union of Atzmas Yom Kippur? He forgives our Averis. Which Avedas does he forgive? Well, my Avedas he gives him the Avedas I did. Your Avedas he gives him the other Avedas. So it's Sop not the real Achdus. The Simcha of Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, is real Achdus, and the Bittul of Rosh Hashanah is also real Achdus. It's not Tavun with your Aveda. It's you Mavatal yourself and you accept the king. So here we see the connection between Shmini Atzeres and the Rosh Hashanah. We see the connection of Parsha Brocha, because Parsha Brocha has this posik which says which is the Achdus of all the Eden, and in connection to Malchus, and it expresses itself with the Simcha, because in the Simcha we have this Achdus. Now the Rebbe goes further. Habiyah. I'll explain it even more. Sholosh regolim in Yonam Me'adim Simcha. We know all the Yom Tov, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, they're all Yom Tov for Simcha. Ela shebe'inyan zeh Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah miyuchodim. But in this inyan of Simcha, Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah is special. All the Yom Tov, the Simcha has to do with the mitzvah, or with the mitzvah, or what the yom is, the day is. Pesach, you're happy. Why are you happy? It's a time and an anniversary for when we became free, the greatest Simcha. Shavuos is because the day David gave the Torah. The Gamba Sukkot was Man Simcha Seinu, Sukkot, which is the really time of Simcha. Shura Simcha b'mitzvahs netilas dalad minim. The yeshiva b'sukkah, kipash taksuvim, it's connected to the fact that we take the 4 minim. We sit in the sukkah. The Kabbalah says, so the pasuk connects the dalad mini with simcha and the sukkah with simcha. So b'meila, it's connected to a specific thing. But the simcha of Shmini Atzeres, there's no mitzvah that you're happy about the mitzvah. There's no inyan, specific inyan that we're happy of that inyan of Pesach. We're happy that this is a time that we became free. There it's simcha itself, and he's going to explain later simcha of what. So when you're happy, you're happy jumping. So he's going to explain later the inyan of Talmud Chuni. It's a simcha in the fact that we're bought today. So it's a simcha not because of a specific act. Since it's a simcha without any connection to a specific mitzvah, so therefore it's higher than the Akbola of all the Ariyam Tevin. Why? Because if it's a simcha connected to a specific thing, then it's limited to that specific thing. The whole mitzvah of a specific thing is a limit. And the simcha is of that specific thing, so it's limited to that. But when it's not limited to something, then it's a simcha be'etzem. And that's something that simcha is not limited higher than Akbola. That's what Simchas Torah. Everyone is the same. Everyone is happy the same. Simcha the Sukkot, which we said before, is connected to a mitzvah. The mitzvah sayim, it's connected to the mitzvah of the day. So the simcha is limited according to the way the mitzvah is. And since there is a difference in how people fulfill the mitzvah daled minim sukkah, you see, not all Yidden are the same. Men are mechuyev and women are not. I mean, the Ketanim not, and there's differences because the mitzvah is different. So there is differences, different limitations to how much simcha you do in connection to how much you have a shaycha to the mitzvah. The gam simcha is based on sheva. Shaleo omru misha lero simcha is a sheva lero simcha mayom. Even considering simcha sheva is the greatest simcha. Gemara says whoever didn't see simcha is a sheva never saw simcha. So l'chura it sounds like it's a simcha b'ligvul. In the me'acha shel shayches l'chag ha'sukkos v'l'nisach ha'mayim shevei, since it's connected to sukkos and to the pouring of the water, yesh nabazeh kam mechilukim, even simcha is a sheva there are differences. The Gemara says rak chasidim v'anshem ha'isayim, only chasidim and special people. They used to dance. Men and women, all the other people came to watch. So they also were Mesamei. When they came to watch, they were happy, but not the same level as the Achsidim Hashemaisa. So here we see that the Simcha is Hagbola, and there are differences. Why? Because the Simcha is connected to the mitzvah, and the mitzvah there are differences. But a Simcha l'maylam did the Hagbola, Simcha without any limitations. That's what there's no agbolas. Who participates in the simcha? Koloshin appeared, like we say in the period of Simchas Torah. Ogil ve'esma v'Simchas Torah. Everyone says, every person says, I'm going to be happy in Simchas Torah. And then we say Avraham samach v'Simchas Torah, Yitzchak and Shlomo samach v'Simchas Torah. So we mentioned me and Avraham and Yitzchak and Shlomo were all Somach Simchas Torah. The period makes it all equal. Uminik Yisrael, Shekol Yisrael, Anoshem v'Noshem v'Tav Smicha Simchas Torah. The meaning is everyone is happy Simchas Torah. So the Simchas Torah is believable. Is a real Simcha. Why? Because the Simchas Torah is not connected to any mitzvah. While Sukkot it is. And that's why we're saying that the Simcha of Simchas Torah, that's the real Achdus of all the Yidden. When do you really see Achdus? If they're all equal. As much as you have Achdus, but there are still differences, it's not Shleimus Achdus, and this makes Shleimus Achdus. Here you do out the they should hear his Achdus v'Iskalul is Kol Yisrael, in order they should really be Achdus, while they bittul Kol Echet Rech Mitzvah. Obviously, in order to be Achdus, everyone has to be Mavadlis Mitzvah. And if a person is not Mavadlis Mitzvah, he can't really be Achdus with somebody else because he is he and somebody else is somebody else. But if his mitzvah doesn't count, then him and him, somebody else become one. So since we said before that the Simchas Torah is the real Achdus in the Simcha, and the only way Achdus can really come is you have the real bittul. So that means that in the Simcha of Simchas Torah, the Herzach, the real bittul of a Yid, bittul of his mitzvahs. Where do we see the bittul of a Yid completely in the union of Simcha of Simchas Torah? So the Rebbe explains it like this: the Geshem Shub and the Geil Klal Yisrael, just like we speak of all the Yidden. There are differences. There's the head and the foot. From the head, like the Pasuk says, till the water carriers. Nevertheless, we say in the Pasuk Atam Mitzvah that they're all bottled in their individuality. And they're all equal on Simchas Torah. All Yidden are equal. The highest, the greatest Yidden, the simple Yidden are equal. The same thing in every single Yid specifically. In every Yid, the head and the foot has to be equal. Not only you and somebody else have to be equal. You yourself have to be so bottled that everything in you is equal. Meaning, Hainu, the head, which generally is understanding, intellect, it becomes like a foot that has Kabbalah Sel. Like the regel. If you would be as the mitzvah to sit down and learn, you'd say, oh, everybody depends how much you can learn. That's not what we do. Where do you show your simcha in the Torah? In dancing with your feet. You dance with your feet. When you dance with your feet, which is the bottom of you, your whole body that dances. So that's the union of dancing. The simcha expresses in the dancing, and the dancing shows that my whole mitzias is one involved, and no mitzias of its own. And in order, the Rebbe says, in order to be interesting, but if you just stand and clap, or when you dance, when you're sitting, you could dance with your feet. You could move your feet when you're sitting, so your feet can dance. But that doesn't make your top of your body dance. Your body doesn't dance. But when you're standing and dance, or you're really dancing, then your feet picks up the whole body, and your whole body is dancing. And that shows the Achdus within the person. And the Mela you could have, so it's a bittul of your mitzvahs that there's nothing specific that you have, which is more seichel. If you're bottled, then you're misachit with other people also. Okay, say even the base nekudas and the Shmini Atzeres. This explains that the two nekudas we said by Shmini Atzeres, which is one is because mucha, which is B'Shur Melech, the mouth. And the second thing is Kalus Kulam Yachad, the fact that we're all together. The second half of the pasuk that Eden gathered together. As I said before, Malchus could only be if you're all ba'achas. So later actually Yeshna B'Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah. So not only do you have it on that day, Eloshem Gambois, you see it in the dancing of Simchas Torah. So the Shaila, we had before, you could say the Klita of Malchus and Achdus of Rosh Hashanah is there in Simchas Torah. But he said, but there has to be something in the Simcha of Simchas Torah. So he says, yeah, we find it in the Simcha. All are equal. And then he says, not only we find it in the Simcha, we find it in the way we do the Simcha, in the dancing. Because the dancing also represents the union of Achdus of all the people, because the dancing represents how my mitzvah is so bottled that there's no head. I have no head, I have no foot. They're all one. We're all bottled. And maybe we're all one. So we see it even in the Rikudim of Simchas Torah. Ubeyeser bir, to explain it even more. Shlilas ha'yischalkus v'am Yisrael b'shaychus l'avegis tamlichuni aleichem. This that we say, that when it comes to the Aveda of accepting David Shter's king, we can't have yischalkus, we can't have division, we have to have the actus. He decided, we said before, why doesn't it have to be through Bittul? Because when you crown the king, it means you give up your Metzias. That's all. If you didn't give up your Metzias, you're not really accepting the king. So the first thing we said before, why is that connected to Bittul? Because that's the only way you accept the king, you have to be bottled. But besides that, till now we said that it's mitzad the people who are makabel the melech, you have to be makabel through Bittul. That's the only way. Now he says, looking at it from the melech's perspective, it's also the same. Also, the only way the real mitzad the melech, it has to be through Bittul. And I'll explain why. After he became king and he makes rules, just like the gzeiras, the rules are different levels. The people who keep the rules, there's also a difference between people. Cotton and Godel. A cotton, a small person, a big person, Eved, Isar, each one has his rules and has to keep the way it fits for him. But when he becomes king, which is that comes before he makes the rules, that's connected to the melech. It's not the rules of the melech. That's the melech himself. And there's only one melech. So the fact is that he becomes your melech, he contains all the people as one. And since by the melech, when he becomes melech, there's only one melech, and as far as he's concerned, there's one nekudah. So just like in the melech itself, who you crown as king, there is no differences. The people who bring about the malchus in the melech are also higher than the chalkis lachodim kech. They're all one. But now we're looking at not one that you have to be bottled, because in order for you to be accept the real king, you have to be bottled mitzvah. From the melech, they're all one. It's another nekudah here. It's because if we're in connecting to the melech als melech, not to the melech's zayda, to melech als melech, and there's only one melech, so automatically we are all one. Because what we're doing here, we have the melech and they're all one bottle to him, all connected to him. And if he's one, so they're all in one nekudah. It's not the melech. Not only, see, till now I was saying individually, each person, in order to be connected to melech, you have to be bottled. So that's something that I have to do. And since I'm bottle and your bottles are all connected. But it's all mitzvah. Now he's saying no, because you're connecting to one nekudah, and that one nekudah is ma'achad them all, because you're all going into one nekudah. This is the Maila of the Simcha of Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, and all the days of Sukkot. Another nekudah here. The 7 days of Sukkot. L'yesha Simcha oz shayches pshula mitzvahs gzeiras hamelech. Since, as we said before, Sukkot, the Simcha is connected to the mitzvahs of that day, which is like the mitzvahs are like the gzeiras, the rules that the king gives. Yeshna b'zei chalkes. So there is a chalkes in the Simcha, difference in the Simcha. Why? Because you're connected to the mitzvahs, and there are many mitzvahs, and there are many shapes in the mitzvahs, many forms of covenant mitzvahs. So it's still possible to be a chalkes. The Simcha is not because of mitzvahs. It's the same thing like a Rosh Hashanah. But now it's more begilui through Simcha, but it's the nekudah of Tamlichuni Aleichem that we're dealing directly with the king. We're not dealing with the king's mitzvahs. Then there is no chalkes with other people. Yisrael. So the Simcha is the Simcha of the Tamlichuni. Tamlichuni is one thing. And I said before, that comes before the Gzeiras. It's basically, I didn't mention it before, it's basically based on the Gemara and on the Medrash, that the Medrash says that why David started Aseret Adibus with Necha Hashem Alekecha. Gives a moshel of a king who came to a city, conquered the city, and when he came into the city, the people came to him and said, Gzeir aleinu gzeiras. Now that you're a king, give us gzeiras. So he said to them, listen, first accept my malchus. Then that's what David also. He started eating, saying, first accept me as a melech. And then I'll give you gzeiras. But what's the nekudah? The gzeiras are protim. That's already an ispashtus of the melech. His rots and what he wants you to do. But the first thing is, and that's one nekudah. So if I'm Ibrigem to Melech and you're Ibrigem to Melech, so besides the fact how it could happen is because if I'm bottle, that's the only way I could give myself over. So and you're bottle, we're one. It's not that. We're both connecting to one Akudah. So B'Mela, we're all one. B'tzad the Melech, we're all one. And the Simcha Shmini Atzeres, that's when we're connected to the Melech himself, because it's not because of the Gzeiras of the Melech. It's Pashat a klita, an internalization of the bittul that we, the Kabbalah's Malchus of Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe says, but Al Pi Hanal Sha'Simcha, the Simcha Steira L'Maylam Dida V'Agbola. Since we said that the Simcha Steira is beyond the limitation, Hashaloch ain't Agbola, B'Las Meichem Bo. Therefore, there are no limitations in the people who partake in it, participate. The question is, and the reason is because it's higher than mitzvahs and higher than Torah. The question is, Loma Nikraz L'Shem Simcha Steira. Why is it called Simcha of the Torah? Shemeira, that shows a Simcha Kshura Mukbelas Lafi Torah. It's a Simcha of Torah. The whole thing we said now it's beyond mitzvahs, it's beyond Torah. It's the Melech himself, and we call it Simcha Torah. Without Torah, L'Chura Yesh Medida. Not only mitzvahs, Torah also is limited. There is a certain concept of limitation. And the fact that the Torah says Arucha me'eretz midah, Arucha min yam, the Torah is longer than any measurement than the land, and wider than the yam. But it mentions the word midah. Mashma she begeder medida. It's mashma that's in the gather of a midah. It's a longer midah, bigger, a very big midah, bigger than that. But there is some measurement, and if there is some measurement, it's not bligvul. So the simcha is connected to the Torah. It shouldn't be connected to the Torah. It should be simcha connected to the Eibishter. We're happy of the Eibishter. Why connect Simchas Torah? And the fact that we call it Simchas Torah shows that that's the Nekudah. At any name that's given to something, that is the kiyum, that is the essence of the thing. So we have to say that the unlimited simcha of Simchas Torah, nirmezes hi b'Hashem Simchas Torah. Has to be hinted in the name of Simchas Torah, which seems to be the opposite. It's the simcha connected to Torah, but that name which represents the real simcha, built in Mukbal, should be hinted in those words. Rabbi is it. Answer is like this. It gets into this in Chassidus. Simchas Torah yeshnei perushim. When we say there is the word Simchas Torah, what is the type Simchas Torah? Two pshatim in Chassidus. One is Yisrael smeichem b'Torah. Yidden are happy with the Torah. The second thing is HaTorah atzma smeicha. The Torah is happy. Now, what kind of Torah is happy? We're dancing with the Torah because we're happy. We are happy that we have the Torah. Or we're dancing with the Torah because we're making the Torah happy. By dancing, we're making the Torah happy. Since both Perushim are in Torah, and Torah is true, they're both true. So they're both Simchas Torah. The Shaykh and the Tlurim, they're connected, and one is dependent on the other. That's why we say it's called Zman Simchoseinu, the time of our Simcha. Who's the hour? So normally people teach our means Yidden. We Yidden, it's our Simcha. But the teach is different. Two types of Simcha. Simchas Yisrael ba'Torah, Simchas HaTorah Atzma Shal Dei Yisrael. The Simcha Yidden have to the Torah, and the Torah is happy through the Yidden. The Yidden are happy because of the Torah, and the Torah is happy that the Yidden make her happy. So these are the two things. Since Simchas Torah is connected to every, we call Yisrael, Gama Noshim, all the even simple people, Noshim, V'tav, even men, women, children, Smeichim are happy. So the reason why we have this Simchas Torah with the both Inyonim has to be understood. And not after to people who learn deep Chassidus. It has to be understood to a simple person, because every simple person dances on Simchas Torah. So the explanation has to be clear. So the Rebbe is going to explain it. If you look simply, Hatamo Kipir Shabbos. So the expression, what it means is, it's mistaber. If you look at these two pshat, which of the two do you think sounds more simple? Sounds more, push the simple pshat, what it is. The second pshat. Because in Bichlal, the first one is that the Yid is happy with Torah. That's the first pshat. The second pshat, we make the Torah happy. So he says like this. In order to be happy with the Torah, in Yonah, what's Torah? The Inyan of Torah, to learn it, lavino, lasiga, to grasp it, to understand it. In order to be happy with the Torah, you got to learn it. Then you could be happy Because you learn Torah, so you're happy with the Torah. And how much happiness will you have depends how much you understand, how much you learn. But Simchas Torah, that can be the pshat. Shebeis HaKofis ain't learned the Torah. HaKofis don't learn Torah. Adarabba, makifim b'Torah, we just go around with the Torah. Ukifishi krucha, as it is wrapped up. U'mechusa b'mapa, covered with a cover, with a mantle. L'chura ein mokem kol kach l'smeya b'Torah. So to say the first pshat that Simchas Torah means we're happy with the Torah, that would fit more if we learn Torah. But here we're not learning the Torah. So what pshat we're happy with what? So therefore it's harder pshat. Simchas Torah Perusha. So what does Simchas Torah really mean? The second pshat, Shat Torah Smecha. The Torah is happy. The Gilei HaSimcha, and the revelation of the Simcha, the Gedel HaSimcha, and the greatness of the Simcha, which is HaKofes, and the Rikud and dancing. B'chol zeh skukot Torah Yisrael Yakif Eis Yirak Dito. Now the Torah is happy on its own. But in order this happiness should come into Gilui, the Torah needs people. The people should take it and walk around with it. Actually dance with it. So you reveal the simcha that the Torah has. So Magdil the simcha Torah, and we make the simcha that the Torah has, make it even more. There's a lotion of the Friedrich Rebbe. I don't see that the Rebbe brings it. The Friedrich Rebbe said, "What's the union of HaKofis? The Torah wants to dance. Yeah, Torah is happy, wants to dance. Torah never has no feet, can't dance. So we become the feet of the Torah. So our dancing is the Torah's dancing. Ubemele, it seems like more the real pshat or the better pshat is the second pshat that the Torah is happy. Because the first pshat would be we're happy with the Torah has to do with our connection to the Torah. So if we learn it, since that's not what HaKofis is, so it must be the second pshat. By Inyanu, what is the Inyan in this that we make the Torah happy? Torah itself does have some kind of limitation. It's Torah, certain things are there. So even though the dancing is from the Torah, it's still not bligvul. Because the Torah is happy. How is the Torah happy? Torah is limited. So the happiness is limited. But if the Yidden dance with it, besides it, they become the feet, as I said before. But when they dance with it, we know that the Yidden are closer to the Eibishter even than the Torah. It says in Medrash that there are quite a few things that is before the creation of the world, and the highest two things are Torah and Yisrael. And between the two gufa, which one is first, closest, is Yisrael. It says, Machshavtam shel Yisrael kodmo afilu the Torah. So the Eibishter's connection, the Eibishter's machshava of Yidden is even before his machshava of Torah. So Yidden have a connection to the etzem of the Eibishter, which is the real bligvul, more than the Torah itself. So as much as the Torah wants to be happy, the Torah is happy, but since it's not all the way to the top etzem, it's not the really bligvul. In order the Torah should have a simcha bligvul, it needs to come onto Yidden. In Aidation is Gala be Yisrael. When in the Yidden that comes in Gala Shersham, the Shersham in Shalamayla Matei, which is high, Shahu bligvul, which is bligvul. And what is Megala by Yidden, that highest madrega? Aidei simcha, Shapeda together, even though simcha breaks through all barriers, it says in Zion, Samach, in Zion. It breaks through, it goes, and any level beyond that, the lower than Atzmus is a Geder, it's a Gvola. It breaks through. So when Yidden do the Simcha, the Zem Amshich and HaSimcha, the Ligvul Gam B'Teira. So we bring the Simcha into the Teira, we bring Ligvul into the Teira, because Yidden hide the Teira. So we said before, the real shot is the Teira wants to be happy. So we do it. But why do we Sofkas of need us? So the deal is because we make the Simcha in the Teira deeper than the Teira itself. Al-Derech, this is Sefer HaBoyer. It says in Sefer HaBoyer, David HaMelech, by learning, he connected the Torah to the Eibishter. What's that connected to the Eibishter? It's hard to understand. It's hard to see this. Torah is not connected to the Eibishter. He's mechaber the Torah to the Eibishter. Hainu shehim shech ba'Torah b'chinis ein sof shalom aylam Torah. That David, who learned the Torah, he's a Yid, so he was able to bring into the Torah the dargim which is higher than the Torah itself. And by David, we find it came to a simcha. We find how David was happy with the Torah. But they brought the orange, which represents the Torah. He was dancing without any limit. Ketainis Michal Basho. It says in Tanakh, Michal Basho. Find it to him. He says, how could you machzich mishuga? He was mamish machzich mishuga, dancing crazy. And she said, yeah, achas hashvach is like a maid. And he did it. Why? When do you take, look, no, this is not pasnish to do this for me, when I'm a mitzias. But when there's no limit, so David HaMelech, we see. So what does it say, Sefer Rabbi? He connected Torah to David. That means they were able to bring something in Torah even more. In Yehoram 44, he says, Al derech hamshochas Yisrael b'Torah, deshaborcha b'Torah tchila. When you make a birchas HaTorah, it also says you bring more higher madregi into the Torah than the Torah has itself. But mainly we understand already here. When we ask the kasha, if the simcha is really blig vula simchas Torah because it's higher than hakbolas, so what does it got to do? Why is it called simchas Torah? They said, if you'd say simchas Torah means because we're happy with the Torah, oh, so it's just like sukkahs, we're happy with the dalet meaning with the sukkah. Here we're happy with the Torah. It's mainly the second pshat, and the second pshat is that it's the Torah happy. And when we dance with the Torah, we reach a level of simcha blig vula. So what he said the whole time before that the Simchas Torah is the level of Achdus because there's no Metzias and there's no limitations and maybe we're all equal. Now we understand it more. It's called Simchas Torah because we dance with the Torah and we're mamshich into the Torah, this blig vul through our dancing. But he said, but according to this, we have to understand since the root of Neshamas is higher than Torah, that's what the Yidden are able to bring the Simcha and Torah. Like the second shot before. Oh, he's asking, but the first shot is also true. The first shot is true. They're both in Chassidus. So there is a shot that we are happy with the Torah. And since Simchas Torah, the Simcha is blig vul, so we explained before how the Simcha blig vul fits to the second shot. The Simcha and Torah is like the Simcha. And we, through dancing, simcha, we reach our madrega. According to the first shot, that we are happy with the Torah, and the happiness of the Mailam Dita Bagbola doesn't make sense. Because we said before the whole time, the Torah is Hagbola, to a very high level, but it's still Hagbola. And if it's Hagbola, how could the simcha, we're happy with the Torah, how could the simcha with the Torah be bligul? If we're happy with something which is vul, how could it be the simcha bligul? Babir, so the explanation is like this. Av shasheres and shamas Yisrael, the Mailam Sheresh HaTorah. True, Sheresh of Yidden is higher than Torah. All the way to Atzmas. There's the Sheresh of Torah, and there is the Torah the way we have it. The Sheresh of Yidden, the way it's Lamaila in Shed, and the way the Yidden are down here. So when we compare the level of Yidden down here and Torah down here, we'll see there's a difference. HaTorah gam k'fi shelamato. The Torah, the way we have it down here, it's one with David. Torah and David is one. Torah is one with Atzmas, in whatever level Torah is with Atzmas, even down here. That's why we say, benching al Teiroscha Shelamadetonu, your Torah that you taught us, that is al Taiches, your Torah means your Torah, the way it's by you, that's the Torah that we learn. Shamas Yisrael, it's Habu Beit, from this species, Shamas Yisrael, Ma'ila, Machshav of Yidden is all one with Eibishter Mamish, higher than Torah. But when it comes down here, Torah Metzias for itself. Ukemosh Ben, the Moshel Chassidus always gives, of a son, a child, is Mahusa, a child comes from the father. It's a separate entity. Nipul have separated from the father. So what we need here is we need to have the Yidden can be megala their sheidish. In order to have the sheidish of real etzem of the Eibishter, which is in Yidden, we have to be megalat somehow. The way Yidden, the neshama is the way are down here. Their connection to Yidden down here, it's like you connect. That's only when you connect yourself to the Torah. Torah is the intermediate. The way Yidden are connected to the Eibishter is through Torah. After the Yidden are connected to the Eibishter through Torah, now Mizgala B'Yisrael Sheish Shulamayla, Shulamayla Matei, and now let Mizgala their Sheish, which is higher than Torah, and they're able to give it to the Torah too. Which is Chassidus always says that the Lashon in Zayar is Las Kishre Miskasher and Davido. There are three knots tied: Torah, Eraisa, Yisrael, the Kuchibricha, Torah, Yidden, and Eibishter. Chassidus always has a kasha. When you have three pieces and you want to tie all three together, you only have two knots. Take three strings and make it into one. You have two knots, the first to the second to the third. Why does it say three knots? I should have said three things are connected. It says three knots. So the answer is, Chassidus gives that it's like a circle. Imagine you have 3 strings and you tie it together from both sides. So you have string number 1 tied to string number 2 with 1 knot, string number 2 to string number 3, second knot, then string number 3 back to string number 1 on the other side. So you have both. So if you ask a shaila, let's call it string A, B, C. So let's say A is the Eibishter. Then you have B and C. So on one side is C, one side is B. If you ask, how is B connected to A? So you could answer, I'll tell you how. It's connected to A because it's tied to A. But I tell you, it's also, you could say connected to A because it's tied to B, and B is tied to C. I mean, connected to C, and C is tied to A. You have a circle. And they're both true. You have the Eibishter, I'm just using the Eibishter, and then you have the Yidden and the Torah. So Yidden are connected to the Eibishter on their own. But they're also connected to the Eibishter through the Torah. So that's the pshat. They're connected, the Sheirish is connected higher than Torah. So in order for Torah to be connected to the Eibishter, has to go through Yidden. But in order for Yidden to connect to the Eibishter, we have to go through Torah. So that's what happens. So Yidden learn Torah. So they get their Sheirish Nizgala, and the moment their Sheirish is Nizgala, their Sheirish is higher than Torah. So now they're able to, since they learned the Torah, to give it to the Torah. So Mamshichim Chinuzu b'Torah. Now we'll understand both Pirushim. The Yidden are happy with the Torah, or that Yidden make the Torah happy, and they're both connected to the Simcha of Ligvul, and they're connected. Why? It starts out like Yidden are happy with the Torah. That's the first shot. So they connected to the Torah. Now through the Torah, they're connected to the Eibush. And now Yisrael now that their Sheiresh is in them, and their Sheiresh is higher than Torah, so now they're able to give it to Torah. So they make the Torah happy that the Torah through the Yidden gets it. So both Yerushim are true. We're able to give the Simcha to Torah. We're able to get the Simcha from Torah, and they're both true. And they're both a Simcha b'ligvul. This is the reason also why we say Psukim Atoresa before Akofis. So it says in Chassidus that why is it? These two Psukim are supposed to be reasons why we're happy Hashmin Atzeres and Chasteda. Just like on Rosh Hashanah, we're supposed to say these Psukim Malchus Chen Shefres to prove the union of David as the Melech and all the other things. So here also we say these to bring rayas for the Simcha. So we bring from these Psukim, and we say it Kedem Akofes. And by what happens by Akofes? She'ozu Ikira Simcha by the Kudim Simcha Steder. That's when you really dance the real dance of Chasteda. So Mevim Taimim Al Simcha Zum Psukim Torah. So we bring reasons why we're so happy from Psukim of Torah. Why? Because Haina Dei Psukim Torah Elu, the godless Avayu, godless Yisrael. When we say Psukim of Torah, and the greatness of David, the greatness of Yidden, Nizgala v'nirgish etzle hasimcha b'ligvul kanal. These Psukim of Torah is Megali in a Yid his Sheirish, the Simcha b'ligvul. And now we could go with the Simchas Torah and dance with the Torah and dance with the Torah with the Sefer Torah. And the Rebbe says the Lashon here is Makiv. Makiv also connects to higher than Gvul. So now you take the Sefer Torah and you bring that big Gvul into the Sefer Torah. And for that we understand. Hashem Simchas Torah, the Pirush Hashem Simcha Shaychus LaTorah. That we say the name is Simchas Torah. According to the Pshat that the Torah is happy, Ein ze stira lanal. It's not a stira. Because if we're saying we are, the Torah is happy and we're connected to the Torah, so how does that do Gvul? So it's not a stira that the Simcha L'mayim B'nei Akbola and Shaychas Yisrael is a stira to the fact that the Simcha Shaychas the Torah. Because we asked the Kasha. We said Sukkah is the problem is it's not Gvul because it's Shaychas to a mitzvah. Here it's Simchas Torah, so it's Shaychas to the Torah. So we asked the Kasha, so how does that fit to the union of Gvul? It's no stira. Ala Adarabe. Okay, Simchas Torah means that why? How? What is it that we connect ourselves to the Torah? And what happens when we connect ourselves to the Torah? That's Megala the Sheirish and Yidden. The fact that we're connected to Torah, that makes our Simcha Bli Gvul. Why? Because if you wouldn't be connected to Torah, our Sheirish, which is Bli Gvul, wouldn't be Begilui. Through Torah, we get the Gilui of the Bli Gvul of the Sheirish, and Mela the Simcha is Bli Gvul. V'gam yachad shifti Yisrael, and we're all together in a chikulam smeichem v'shavar, we're all equal. Kimitzat sheirish nafshem, because of the sheirish, kulam asimis, we're all equal. Av echad, we have one father, and kol Yisrael lim achim mamish, all the Yidden are mamish like brothers. So here we explain the connection to the parasha. It's all connected to this posik. And that is connected to, that's the connection bracha to Shmini Atzeres, because there we see the union of Malchus and the union of Achdes, which is Rosh Hashanah, and here also, and that's expressed in the Simcha, because the Simcha is also a Simcha of Kabbalah's Malchus, and it's connected to Torah, because that's Megala as the Sheirish. The Mela we're able to have the Simcha bleed. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. A good moed.
Good made, yes. Good made. A good yom tov for everybody.